All we ask is embrace the vision.
You already know what it is, Vision Gang, and if you didn't know, you better find out. This is your boy, DaVizion, and we got another UFC reaction. This time, we got opponents before and after fighting Alex Pereira. You already know, man, Poatan is a monster. Poatan is a beast. Poatan is like one of the dopest MMA fighters of all time, and I know a little bit about him now because of these reactions, but I want to see some more Poatan. I want to see what his opponents look like before the beatdowns and then after the beatdowns. You feel me? So we're going to jump right into that, y'all. Opponents before and after fighting Alex Pereira. Let's get it.
Imagine becoming UFC champion in under 5 fights. Case study number 1, Brock Lesnar.
Brock is the real
Beast.
deal.
WWE
Beastly
superstar,
monster.
Biggest box office draw in heavyweight history.
Real deal
Brock
fighter,
went
though.
from
Like crazy.
pro wrestling to being the UFC heavyweight champion, and did so with such a short amount of time of training in MMA.
A former NCAA Division I champion. Didn't really deserve it, but the UFC is a business, and business-wise, it made sense. Scary dude, too. Case study number 2, Alex Pereira. Prior history with a popular UFC middleweight. Storyline too good to pass upon.
He's gonna be at some pub talking some shit about I beat that guy one time.
Former kickboxing champion, former Glory middleweight champ, former Glory light heavyweight champ.
Decorated.
In terms of
Well
business,
decorated before the
prize
UFC.
makes sense. Accolade-wise, he deserved it. We have seen amateur kickboxers in the UFC. We have seen professional ones, champions even, but Alex Pereira was a double champion in the sport and objectively terrifying. Like he has no soul and exists only to inflict misery and trigger nightmares.
Knee kicks.
Alex is a big, scary fucking Brazilian. I think we all admit that. You're at ATM and this motherfucker walks up behind you in the middle of the night. You tell me what, you're gonna be walking away.
This guy, with his disgustingly powerful left hook, has slept contenders and champions in that sport. And this one too. At 36 years of age and just a couple of fights under the UFC banner, Alex Pereira is on his way to achieving peak greatness in the MMA world as well.
Yeah.
He's out there, man. He's up there. All right, because he had DaVizion. DaVizion, when he fights, is so
He
calm,
had DaVizion.
so relaxed.
DaVizion.
Rise, yes.
You feel me?
Justified?
You get it.
You're damn right. Welcome to the fighting business. Brock Lesnar rose to the top largely due to his popularity in the mainstream world, and throughout his run, people complained, and for justified reasons. I don't hear too many complaints when it comes to Pereira, but for those who need a backstory to this guy, what he accomplished in kickboxing and his short UFC career, here is where you need to be. What is it like to face a monster like this?
Even his striking will not be the same.
Let his opponents tell the story for us.
So don't fucking tell me just because you're some big fucking Brazilian. You knocked out Izzy 20 years ago. Fucking I can't stand it.
Describe the brutal mental and physical damage that this Brazilian rock is capable of inflicting.
He's very one-dimensional. He's early on in this game as well. So I'm even glad to get him now.
Let's watch. Let's find out. Because these naysayers got proven wrong, obviously.
Before the UFC.
And this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Glory, headquartered in London and in operation since 2006, is the UFC of the kickboxing world. That should bring you up to speed. If you stumble across a kickboxing fight on YouTube or a knockout clip on TikTok with actual lighting and good camera work, chances are that you are watching Glory. Now, who is the GOAT of Glory? Glory fans like us cannot arrive at a unanimous answer, but there are a few candidates, with one of them being Alex Pereira.
He's just freakishly long and big for that weight class. And his power. Those guys are the guys I worry about.
Nicknamed Poatan, as in
Poatan.
Hammer and Stones, Alex made his Glory kickboxing debut in 2013. He already held world titles in the sport, but in the top kickboxing organization, Pereira did the unthinkable. He became champ, won the middleweight title against Simon Marcus.
New Glory middleweight champion of the world!
Won the interim light heavyweight title with a left hook, unified the light heavyweight crown in a close battle against Artem Vakidov, and after a hard-fought loss in the rematch at Glory 78, Pereira bowed out of the sport as a definite all-time great.
Like God say, I'm moving on to MMA. I signed with the UFC. I'll be fighting on Madison Square Garden in New York City on November 6th. I hope I got all you guys' support.
But then someone over in the MMA world started talking shit.
At the end of the day, No one knows who the f he is. He's gonna be at some pub talking some shit about I beat that guy one time, trying to get a dick sucked from a crack hole or some shit.
Disrespect was not going to be tolerated. Pereira had dealt with this guy before, and it was time to do so again. But this time, in a different combat zone. Andreas Michailidis. Little known fact, but Alex Pereira competed in MMA during his kickboxing days, but not for too long. He had a 2-1 record, and his fame in the other sport was simply too much, and so he focused solely on kickboxing for the next several years. In 2020, motivated by a well-known rival, Poatan returned to MMA, and the UFC came knocking on his door. For his promotional debut, Alex was set to face Andreas Michailidis. Who? Michailidis was a promotional newcomer as well, and he was 1-1 in the UFC. This was the perfect test to gauge just how well Pereira had adapted to MMA, and if he could not get up from the ground with this dude, he would have no hope of getting to championship contention. Alex Pereira was a proven kickboxer, not a mixed martial artist.
And in MMA, even striking is different. Like everything changes. You have to be aware from the takedown, from punches, for everything. So even his striking will not be the same as the kickboxing.
Not a whole lot to show here, but Andreas made it pretty clear that he was not willing to stand and trade with Pereira, pretty much literally. As soon as the fight began, Michailidis attempted to hold on to Pereira, doing all it took to stay away from his strikes. He won the first round, but the stalling and cage hugging pissed off the stone-cold killer from Glory. Early second round, flying knee to the face, a few extra strikes, and just like that, Pereira had his first UFC win. And just like that, the middleweight champion stayed awake the whole night. Questions were answered.
Pereira, we've been looking forward to you being in the UFC for a long time. Congratulations on a spectacular debut.
This guy was a KO machine and had transitioned into MMA fairly well. He was still green, but no use putting the guy against fighters outside the top 15. Michailidis was not seen or heard from until a couple of months later, and after his second consecutive loss to Rinat, the Greek fighter was released from the UFC. Months later, when promoting an octagon card, Andreas cautioned every UFC middleweight about the size and strength of Poatan.
He came out of nowhere. Shit happens, you know. But he's a big guy. I wrestle a lot of guys. This guy, he's strong. Like, I didn't expect him to have like this defense to wrestle.
Now that he mentioned it, Alex was definitely huge for the division, and he never really smiled. One fight with the UFC, and the fear had already set in. Bruno Silva. Next up for the former Glory champion was an MMA veteran, rightfully nicknamed Armored. Bruno Silva looked unbreakable. He was a UFC new guy as well, but with over 30 MMA fights, he was vastly more experienced than Pereira, and with 0 knockout losses and unshaken confidence in his durability, Bruno Silva was ready and willing to strike.
Okay. You guys are not going to see me fighting like Khabib or Demian Maia. If I have to, I will, but I'm going to look for another knockout.
Not only was he blessed with an iron chin, Silva had 20 knockouts victory himself, and so this was a big step up in competition.
My background's MMA. I did start just in MMA. I didn't do jiu-jitsu, submission, or kickboxing before, and I did start as MMA, and I'm still fighting MMA. According to Alex, 15 guys denied to fight him, and I was a crazy number 16. Yeah, because a lot of guys, they have fear, but I have fear and I'm brave, so yeah, I'm gonna fight him.
Então aceitei a luta pensando nisso já.
While Pereira was a superb striker, he was hardly invincible, having suffered a few knockouts in his kickboxing career, and if someone was going to test his chin, small MMA gloves, Bruno Silva was definitely the guy. At UFC Fight Night 203, two great strikers at 185 met, and after a little while, it became apparent that Pereira was simply the better striker. Bruno had to wrestle, but the takedowns didn't amount to much, and while he didn't get knocked out, he had to survive to the third round with a broken nose, and the judges scored all 3 in favor of Alex.
Well, we talk about MMA, right? A lot of people criticize my grappling, my ground, and I came here to showcase what I do every day.
Someone actually took the kickboxing champion to a decision.
Took him to a decision, at
hardly
least.
Dwindled, especially considering the damage he had inflicted onto the superb, durable middleweight. Silva later came out with a statement, something about the pre-fight interviews and the promise to strike affecting his game plan.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that I was going to go.
So he was definitely salty.
Survive Poatan, and that's not what happened. I actually walked in there to actually knock him out.
Having said that, he still had to wrestle at times. 2-0 in the UFC. He had beaten a sacrificial lamb and a veteran. The next choice was obvious, especially with Israel at the top. Contender, fighter, nothing. But who on earth was going to fight this dude? Sean Strickland. After the victory over Bruno Silva, the UFC had seen enough and pushed Alex towards the top of the middleweight division. More and more vignettes and clips of Pereira knocking out Israel began to flood MMA websites. And
that's crazy.
It was just
he done knocked out Izzy a few times.
Victory over a top contender, and Pereira would be next in line. Fortunately, a top contender was idle and crazy enough to take on this beast, the American Psycho, Sean Strickland.
I'll just come out and say it, man. I've been training hard, ready to knock this guy out, training with kickboxers, and I'm ready.
There was a mini tournament set for UFC.
He didn't even sound like he was serious about what he said.
Pereira, while the champion Israel faced Jared Cannonier. This led to some glorious cross trash talk, mostly from Sean, but there was one moment during the press conference where the champion and his boogeyman greeted each other in their own special way. The rematch in MMA was going to be a sight to behold, but Pereira had to get past Strickland first. Despite all the edgy talk and general hilarity, there was no denying that Sean was a high-level MMA striker, and he had no fear of standing and trading with the Brazilian.
So don't fucking tell me just because you're some big fucking Brazilian, you knocked out Izzy 20 years ago, that fucking I can't stand with you. Come on, motherfucker.
Nah.
Get out of here. He's not even a good striker, bro. Like, what is Pereira? If you were a normal-sized fucking human being, you wouldn't even fucking be here. Your style sucks.
Sean was insane enough to take the fight, and he was
talking big
insane
shit
enough to try his luck in the stand-up. But maybe he was right. Andreas and Bruno's were barely strikers in comparison to Strickland, and Tarzan was capable of exposing a transitioning kickboxer in the MMA world. On fight night, Strickland didn't attempt a single takedown and actually stood in front of Pereira, shoulder rolled, parried, and traded jabs, but even a seasoned striker like Sean was not able to deal with the skill of Poitin. And in the first round of the fight, that left hook landed, and that was all she wrote.
The next
too fucking strong, man. Because he ain't no normal 185 though. Like he dude really fighting at about 215, 219, like they said in one of the previous videos. Like dude is huge. That's a huge motherfucker.
We had a new #1 contender for the dominant champion. Strickland and Pereira formed sort of a friendship after the fight and ended up as training partners. With the help of Alex, Strickland became the middleweight champion, but I doubt he feels any different about Poitin today.
Here's the thing, guys, about Alex. I could spar Alex, and I could go point for point, and I could hit him, I could kick him. But the difference is, the man touches you, and you just die.
You just couldn't stand in front of the freaking guy, but we knew for a fact his next opponent was going to. Israel Adesanya.
That's crazy how their attitudes towards this dude just changed.
It was a no-brainer. After knocking out Strickland, Pereira was headed straight to the mountaintop.
Talking big shit, and then all of a sudden,
we know who's next. That Poitin.
Before we get into this one, man, like Sean Strickland, like dude was really talking big shit, like for real. And the fact that before the fight he was on one totally different spectrum than after the fight, and then he's just like, yeah, like I can trade blows with him, but as soon as he hits me, I'm dead. So it's pointless to fight him. Like that's a totally different attitude towards him than the mockery and all the stuff he was doing before the fight, which is just crazy. Like he really do change people's opinion. He's an opinion changer. Like he really knocks some sense into you. That's like that what's my name? That Ali back in the day. What's my name? Like I think he really doing that to folks.
Next time I put you on skates, you're gonna get left frozen, like Elsa. I'll leave it at that.
Years ago, Pereira had sent this guy to the shadow realm, but here he stood at the top of the MMA world as the UFC middleweight champion.
In your mind, when you face him, what's your message to Alex, and how do you see it going this time?
Like I said, I'm gonna put him on skates and leave him frozen. That's the plan. You're so dominant, people just expect spectacularness constantly, so I like my back against the wall.
We all know the history here. Pereira had defeated Israel twice, one time by decision, and in the rematch, Adesanya was put on oxygen. The question was, would it be the same in type of case? Israel assured us all that
you gotta knock the fuck out like that, Izzy.
And we will get this done. And this is gonna be no different. I don't chase anything, they all chase me. You should have killed me in Brazil. But yeah, now it's my time and I'll crush him totally.
Israel repeated what was often said. That was kickboxing. This was MMA.
This isn't kickboxing. He does have a lot of experience, and I've given him his respect, but this is my game, and I'm the game master, so he's early on in this game as well. So I'm even glad to get him now.
And in MMA, Israel was a lot more experienced, a lot more proven, and with 2 losses to Pereira, the champion was determined to win. He just could not lose, but as he faced off against his old foe in the press conference, Pereira, who barely spoke English, warned his old victim. In one of the most anticipated fights in recent memory, the 2 rivals met once again under completely different rules and circumstances. Adesanya, who had dealt with criticism due to his passive fighting style, actually met Pereira head-on in terms of pure technique and finesse. Easily one of the best kickboxing bouts in UFC, and this continued for 5 rounds. Israel ahead on the scorecards. He was this close to defending his championship, but then Poatan found that one shot, and it was all he needed.
Them punches shocked the world.
Champion in his 4th fight,
there.
And on top of that, he had
Rocked
just
the
knocked out one
landscape
of
for
the
the
greatest
UFC.
middleweights of all time. All of us were expecting Israel to have a meltdown, given that he had lost to the same guy for the 3rd time, but the former champion congratulated Alex inside the octagon and showed up to the post-fight interviews.
I'll give him one thing. He knows how to recover, and it's kind of like the same story as the last kickboxing fight we had. You know, I'm up, I'm having him, I'm staying focused, and then he just catches me.
Given his status as a superstar and a long-reigning champion, a 4th act was a guaranteed, but fans were now certain that Alex had his number. But ultimately, 4th time was the charm.
Yes, he did get him back.
Jan Blachowicz. Maybe UFC 287 was the one time in 10 that Israel was going to win. Maybe the bait worked, maybe the weight cut was too much, or maybe Israel and Alex were equally skilled, and all it took was one shot.
I think that's more the case. Like, I think they're very similar skilled. In each of these fights, Alex just happened to hit the shot first, except for that fight where Israel did that. But then Israel didn't give him a rematch. He should have gave him a rematch to prove who was better, though. That's crazy.
He could have retired as one of the most credentialed combat sports athletes of all time, but some time ago, Izzy moved up to 205 in an attempt to become double champion, and it didn't work out for him. The light heavyweight division needed a new face, and while a championship fight was not on the table for Alex, the guy who beat Israel was willing to welcome him.
Send a message to UFC, I want him, and we have him, so I'm happy that I can fight against someone like him, and that's it, you know. I want to check my stand-up against him and try to knock him out.
Former 205-pound champion Jan Blachowicz versus former 185-pound champion Alex Pereira was set for UFC 291, and the winner was likely to get a championship opportunity. Up until now, Pereira had faced mostly strikers, and while Jan was pretty decent on the feet, he was just as competent as a grappler, and wrestling Alex was definitely a backup plan.
I want to check my stand-up against him and try to knock him out, but if, you know, something goes wrong in stand-up, I can use my wrestling and take him down, finish him on the ground. This is what I want to do.
Jan had beaten up so many middleweights attempting to move up, and you had to wonder, would Alex be any different? The weight cut to 185 was brutal, but at the same time, more power at 205, and Pereira was fighting months after a brutal knockout loss.
UFC always seems to turn to you to welcome these middleweights up from the middleweight division.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this is my job, you know, in UFC to send them back to the lower division.
So many high-level middleweights who
sends them back to the lower division.
Alex Pereira is different probably than all of them. Is the game plan going to be similar for him as it was for them in the past?
I believe that's gonna be same. He's gonna lose.
In the co-main event of UFC 291, Alex faced the former 205 champion, and in the first round, it was all wrestling. Jan secured a takedown and grappled the whole round, but Alex remained calm, fought off the submission attempts, and survived to the second. That answered some questions about his unknown ground game, and in the second, Blachowicz was exhausted. The next 2 rounds were competitive, but at the end, it was Poatan who got his hands raised, proving that he was indeed different from the other middleweights. He had just defeated the guy who beat Adesanya, and most of the MMA community thought the decision was fair, but Blachowicz thought otherwise. That was all the former champion had to say. Regardless, Pereira won a shot at the vacant title.
What do y'all think?
Brings us to UFC 2.
What do you guys think below? Y'all that seen that fight or or if it, like seen a lot of discussion about that fight. What's your opinion about who won that fight, Jan Blachowicz versus Pereira? Let me know down below what y'all opinion about that decision was.
95. This dude has been in the UFC for a hot second now, and while some may argue that he got pushed too quick, look at the guys he has fought and defeated.
And he's a big motherfucker too, so I held him down. And again, he's a guy that recovers well. He recovers really well.
With Strickland becoming champion, Alex has already faced 3 world champions, and his next fight against Yuri will be no different.
If Yuri Prochazka beats Glover in the rematch, and then he decides to avenge Glover and fight Yuri Prochazka, they got a great storyline.
This will be another violent collision between 2 of the most dangerous strikers in UFC today.
There's nothing to left. We are ready to die.
And if he wins, if he becomes double champion in the UFC in under 10 fights, you know you are looking at a paragon of combat sports. Alex Poatan Pereira will not be around for long, but as I end this video, I have to ask, given the storylines, the hype, the violence, is anyone still going to complain that this dude doesn't deserve it? He deserves this, and if he becomes the light heavyweight champion, he will deserve much, much more. I hope you enjoyed, but I gotta bounce. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace out.
Okay, yeah. Alright, y'all. Yeah, that was a very good video. It was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more on the physical, you know, before and after, like physical, because that's the way the thumbnail kind of made me feel like that, you know, it was kind of going to show like how beat up the person was, but really didn't really focus on that. It was more of their attitude and the way they was talking and the way they respected Poatan before and after their fights. And he really put every single person he fought in their place, honestly. Izzy got his revenge, but at the end of the day, then he went up to another level and beat the dude who Izzy couldn't beat. So that's kind of, again, like another, like, fuck you to Izzy. Like, it's crazy. Poatan is the real deal, y'all. And one of the best to really ever do it at the middleweight and the light heavyweight levels, y'all. He's really that much of a monster. He could move up to heavyweight if he really wanted to. Even I think he'd still be on the smaller side of the heavyweights. He could honestly, he could probably move up to heavyweight with his striking skills. I don't know how his wrestling would fare against some of those bigger heavyweights that are like going to be able to match his strength, and I don't know if his knockout power would be enough to go up to heavyweight. So let me know down below if y'all know about that as well. Like, y'all think he got enough power and skill to move up to heavyweight if he really wanted to, or should he just stay at light heavyweight? Is that his like max? But John Jones don't look like he's that much bigger when he was at light heavyweight when he was younger than Alex is right now. So yeah, that's what I really want y'all to let me know down below. And as always, y'all, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit the notification bell if you really want to see the videos as soon as they drop, so you can get that notification, you feel me? And as always, y'all, be safe, give it your all, and I'll see you next time. Peace.